Let's give a huge round of applause to Nigel.
Okay, thank you. So I've made a last-minute decision to go with my own laptop instead of the screen, so I don't have a clicker, I'll have to move forward. This should be kind of an easy one. The future of Kubernetes, as we're going to see in a slide or two's time, is pretty much world domination. But we will get into like 4 or 5 particular things that we should expect to see from Kubernetes going forward. Anyway, this is me, so just a very kind of brief background. I've worked with containers and Kubernetes since pretty much the beginning. Well, not the beginning of containers, but the beginning of Docker. And then when Kubernetes came along, I kind of, I didn't dump Docker, but I kind of read the writing on the wall and made that switch to Kubernetes, which I see more and more organizations and individuals themselves doing now. I used to have, well, I've had conversations for a very long time. I think when you write books and stuff, there's a tendency for people to think that you know everything, which is totally not true, of course. But they'll come to you and they'll ask you questions all the time. And I was constantly being asked by people, should I be deploying Kubernetes? And it was always like a few years ago, like, probably not for most people. It's really complex, it's really hard. You can get away with maybe Docker Swarm or something else. Then it kind of changed to be like, yeah, it's probably not for you just yet, but keep a close eye on it. Whereas now when I'm talking to people, it's like, wow, if you're not on board with it now, you need to get on board. Now, this is not for everybody, but maybe 90% of people now, if you're not on board or considering getting on board, you run quite a huge risk, I think, of being left behind. Anyway, so that's me. Like I said, the future of Kubernetes is pretty much world domination. I did want to have like a... what is it? Is it from the Austin Powers movies, like Dr. Evil or whatever? I'm having a brain freeze now. But look, let's get to the content, right? So I think we should expect from Kubernetes going forward that it's going to orchestrate a lot more than just containers. So it's super famous at the moment for being like the de facto platform for managing and orchestrating container-based workloads. However, there's significant work going on within the wider ecosystem to sort of collapse or fold in a lot more workload types to Kubernetes. So I think going forward, certain projects will start to see us using Kubernetes to manage virtual machine workloads and also serverless workloads like function as a service workloads. And I think the idea there is that if we can, going forward, organizations and individuals that want to make investments in technology for the future not only want it to be there for the long run, the technology, so they want to be able to see the writing on the wall that Kubernetes is going to be here like forever-ish, but they also want to say, well, if I'm going to make that technology investment in Kubernetes, I'd love to be able to do more than just containers on it, right? I've still got a bunch of VM workloads, and I'm going to have more VM workloads. I'm going to have function as a service, like serverless type workloads. And if we can fold all of those into Kubernetes or have Kubernetes manage them, it's that much better technology investment. I think as well as folding in, though, different workload types to Kubernetes, we're also going to fold in intelligence. So operators within Kubernetes allow us to, say, take domain-specific knowledge, like let's say knowledge of how to deploy a particular database in a highly available, high-performance way. And instead of investing all of that in some like ugly scripting, a much better way is to invest that knowledge into an operator in Kubernetes. So I think the point from this is that going forward, we should expect Kubernetes to do virtual machines, serverless workloads, containers, and sort of move a little bit further up the stack as well and fold in application intelligence. Evolving to become the dark matter. So I'll get around to what I mean by this, but Kubernetes was hard. Well, it was super hard, and it's still a little bit hard. But a lot of people opted to take a managed Kubernetes approach to be able to like onboard themselves to Kubernetes. So let's say an organization has said, yes, we feel that Kubernetes is the future for us, but look, it looks really complicated to build something that's highly available and high performance. Instead of me hiring staff and trying to do that all myself, I'll just go and I'll trust one of my cloud providers, let's say AWS or Google or whoever, and I will allow them to build for me a highly available Kubernetes cluster that they'll take care of updating. And it was that easy on-ramp for people to say, look, I'll just take that off the shelf from AWS or from Azure or wherever. And I think generation 1 of managed Kubernetes services would manage the control plane for you. We're starting to see managed Kubernetes services manage your worker nodes as well, so a lot more of the infrastructure. But I think the end goal is really that Kubernetes is just there, and you almost don't even know it's there. And that's the kind of play on words I'm making here with dark matter. Like, we know apparently that dark matter is there, and it makes up whatever it is, I don't know, 70% of the universe, and nothing works without it, right? But I have no idea anything about it, but I get on with life, and if there was no dark matter, I couldn't live my life. Well, we're going to get to the point, hopefully, where Kubernetes is just there in the background, and we focus on delivering applications and delivering services and delivering features to customers. And ideally, an organization doesn't even have to understand Kubernetes. Somebody might point out, oh, it's Kubernetes behind the scenes, right? And the business and the application and the end users are like, okay, no idea. But it's powering what they do. So we're seeing a lot of people use managed Kubernetes at the moment, but I think going forward, the kind of managed Kubernetes we will see will kind of fold in and collapse in more of the infrastructure, more of the application management as well, to the point where it just exists, and we, for the best part of it, we don't know it's there. And I think the take-home point there really is that more and more work and services will run on Kubernetes, but we will need less and less Kubernetes expertise within the majority of organizations. That expertise will live with the major clouds and people like that. One API to rule them all, playing off one ring to rule them all. So, I don't know, Kubernetes is like, there's a general consensus that it is the de facto API or the de facto solution for deploying cloud-native applications. Things are building around it, okay? But it's got like this, it's already got built-in authentication, built-in auditing, built-in rate limiting, all these kind of foundational things. In fact, it's got a bunch of built-in features that allow us to deploy and manage workloads on Kubernetes, but very much basic workloads. So I'm saying out of the box, Kubernetes comes with all this stuff, authentication, auditing, the ability to deploy simple applications. But the future really is in custom resources or in extending that Kubernetes API so that third-party applications look, smell, and feel as if they're native Kubernetes applications. So the thing is, like I said before, the writing is all over the wall that Kubernetes is the future. And as part of that, just about every tech organization out there is putting Kubernetes first in its kind of strategy with its applications and things. So these applications will come to Kubernetes. I saw it a lot in the last couple of years with not applications, okay, but let's say infrastructure, okay. So a lot of third-party data management companies and storage companies were bringing their storage services that would have like highly available, high-performance storage that replicates, it does snapshots, it does all this clever stuff. But it's folded into Kubernetes because they've extended the Kubernetes API to kind of incorporate their storage systems to the point where, as a developer or an operator, it just looks like Kubernetes to me. So that's like kind of a major thing to look out for Kubernetes in the future, that it's not just going to be the core things that come from upstream Kubernetes, but the entire ecosystem is going to build into it. So infrastructure and applications will just run on Kubernetes and, like I say, look, smell, and feel like they are Kubernetes. Abolishing cloud serfdom, right? So back in the day, in and around the UK and Europe, at least, there were like a handful of lords and ladies and aristocracy that owned all of the arable land or all of the good land that could be farmed and could be worked on, right? And generally speaking, if you wanted to run a farm or if you wanted to run a business, maybe you're a blacksmith or something, it doesn't really matter. You had to go and effectively rent land from these people. And the sad side of the story is that you kind of became indentured to them, where your entire life and your business was tied into this land that you were never going to own, and you couldn't escape it and move your business or your farm somewhere else if you wanted to. So it sounded great at first. You would go and you would rent this land, but suddenly you became tied to this small group of people and you were paying large amounts of your profits and things to them. I mean, there's obviously a potential similarity in the cloud world at the moment where every business pretty much needs a space in the cloud to run their applications. And certainly the hyperscale clouds are potentially, look, I'm not saying they're evil in any way at all, okay, but they are kind of similar to the old aristocracy and the lords of the old world where, yes, we go and we say, okay, it's Cloud X that we want to go with, and we start building our business and our infrastructure on it. And suddenly we realize, maybe it's not the best cloud for us, it's more expensive, it doesn't do what we want, it doesn't give the reporting or whatever, and we want to move to a different cloud because it looks better. But actually we're super locked in the same way that people used to be in the past, and it's not hard, it's not easy to escape that kind of lock-in. So Kubernetes has this, the small print applies, okay, but it has this huge potential to come and say, it doesn't matter what cloud you run on, if you install Kubernetes on it and you write your applications to run on Kubernetes, you can install Kubernetes on another cloud and more easily migrate your application across to it. A more technical example would be, we haven't for years written applications to run on whatever, Dell servers or HPE servers or Supermicro servers. We run our applications to run on Windows or Linux, or we did for a long time, right? And as long as we could install Windows or Linux on whatever manufacturer or brand or vendor of server, it didn't matter if we were on Dell today and Supermicro was cheaper the next day or the next year. We just install Windows or Linux, move the application across because it abstracts the hardware below it. So Kubernetes has this potential going forward to abstract the cloud infrastructure below it and make it easier to do multi-cloud, to migrate between clouds, things like that. It's also going to become a supermassive black hole. And what I mean by this is the ecosystem around Kubernetes is becoming huge. It's got all these things circling around it, bringing all these amazing new features and things. An example I give quite a lot, right, is that if you deploy containers today, most of the container registries out there will, when you upload a container or a container image, it will do a deep analysis of that image and it will provide you a really good report that says, okay, we've compared all of the code and the applications and the libraries in your image against databases of known vulnerabilities, and this is what you're vulnerable to at the moment, and it gives you this scary list. Now, we never had that before we had containers and Kubernetes. But it's just one example of the kind of new features and things that are being built by the ecosystem that are all circling around Kubernetes. They're coming to Kubernetes and containers first, and potentially coming to containers and Kubernetes only. So this kind of ecosystem of all of the tools and things that you as a business and you as a team within your business want to be more productive and to provide better services to your customers, they're all coming to the world of Kubernetes. And actually, that's it. I'm done. So basically, thank you. I am a fanboy, but Kubernetes is the future. Whether you like it or you hate it, it is the future for most people.